So basically, you need a plan of action, right? Because when I started out, I was trying to do every single different Amazon business model. I was trying to do books, I was trying to do thrifting, I was trying to do retail arbitrage, online arbitrage, wholesale, private label, and just figure everything out at once, and it doesn't work that way because like the saying goes, you can be a jack of all trades, master of none, right? So basically it means you know a little bit of everything, but you're not really good at anything, You're not really proficient in one business model, you just kind of know how to do a little bit of each one. So pick one of those models, learn it, try it out for a few months, figure out if it's what's, really going to work for you or what's best for you in your situation. What's going on, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, make sure you hit the subscribe button, ring the bell so you know when new videos are posted. The channel is basically about e-commerce, entrepreneurship in general, reselling, basically just different ways you can make money without having to work for someone else. So this video, obviously you can see from the title, is about scaling your Amazon business, e-commerce business, eBay, whatever you do to sell things online to make money, basically. So, this is basically just going to be a brief overview, some things that, like, from my experience, a lot of hard lessons I learned of things I wish I knew I needed to plan for ahead of time to kind of scale to a, multiple six-figure business, $500,000, $750,000, and then $1 million business, and so on and so forth. So one of the first things that you really need is the mindset and the dedication, commitment to this business, right? So that's one of the first things. And again, you don't need this if you're just going to do this business kind of part-time on the side. Maybe you have a full-time job. Maybe you're a stay-at-home mom just looking to make an extra $500, $2,000 a month, which that's fine. You don't necessarily need this full on, devotion and commitment to it. But maybe you see the, scalability of it. Maybe you see the potential that this business has and you want to turn it into something that can be a primary source of income for you. So that's what I would say definitely needs to be the first thing that you have, is that mindset and that commitment of understanding that, figure out what time you have to commit to the business first. Figure out, hey, I have an extra 4 hours a night after I put the kids to sleep to work on this thing, or, I'm getting out of this current business I have. Maybe you own a used video game store currently and you're selling that business and you're going to do something completely new, so you have all the time in the world. So you figure out, hey, I have 40, 60, 80 hours a week to commit to this thing as long as it's going to be making money and my time's going to be worth it. So you need to figure that out first and then have the mindset going into it of, hey, this is where I want to go, this is what I want to do, and this is what it's going to take to get there. So that kind of rolls into the next thing, which would be have an action plan, something I never really had and I was just kind of figuring out from the get-go. And that's why a lot of the time I always coach and tell people is that when you, especially we'll talk about mostly Amazon FBA because that's 95-99% of what my business has been Amazon FBA, not eBay, Poshmark. I do those other things, but just to kind of supplement Amazon. So basically you need a plan of action, right? Because when I started out, I was trying to do every single different Amazon business model. I was trying to do books, I was trying to do thrifting, I was trying to do retail arbitrage, online arbitrage, wholesale, private label, and just figure everything out at once, and it doesn't work that way because like the saying goes, you can be a jack of all trades, master of none, right? So basically it means you know a little bit of everything, but you're not really good at anything, You're not really proficient in one business model, you just kind of know how to do a little bit of each one. So pick one of those models, learn it, try it out for a few months, figure out if it's what's, really going to work for you or what's best for you in your situation, or do you need to switch to a different model after you've learned one, or maybe you learn one, become proficient with it, and then you add in another business model, but don't just go jump right from one to the other after a week or two of like, hey, I bought 400 books on a mint, I don't like doing books, I'm going to do retail arbitrage now before the books start even selling, because you may realize that, hey, the margins on these books are great, I don't have a lot of capital to start out with, I'm going to do this for 3, 4, 5, 6 months, and then once I have more capital, start, learning and experimenting with some of those other business models. So develop a plan of action, right? Figure out, do your research is probably the best first topic, really, and figure out which business model might work for you, which is most interesting to you, and then develop that plan of action, right? So figure out if you want to make $2,000 per month. How many books you're gonna have to buy, how many books you're gonna have to ship to Amazon, and then how often are those gonna sell, right? Of course, there's no way to predict these numbers right off the bat, but have a general idea, right? If you realize I need $2,000 per month, say on average that's $2 profit per book, you need to sell 1,000 books in a month to make $2,000. Now, of course, books are gonna sell that you make $30 profit on, $5 profit, maybe 70 cents profit. You might lose some money on some books, but realize you have to sell 1,000 books within a month. That's 1,000 divided by 30 is, I can't do math, hold on. 1,000 divided by 30 is 33 books roughly a day. You know, so figure out, okay, I need to send that many. So that means you need to send in 33 times 7, 231 books per week is what you need to be selling. So you need to be sending in that same amount or more per week, because especially with books, not every single one of those books is going to sell within the month you send them in. A lot of books won't sell for 6 months, a year, or 2 years or longer, depending on the rank. So just realize that I need to send in 200 books, and what kind of time that's going to take, what kind of capital and money that's going to take as well. You know, same goes for wholesale, same goes for RA, how many products do you need to be sourcing, how many pallets of stuff do you need to be buying to, you know, sell the amount of units you need to sell to make the amount of money that you need to make. So have that stuff in place first and just kind of have an idea of like what you're working towards. Like for me, I was so scrambled in the beginning for really the first year, you know, trying to juggle everything. I was just spending money as quickly as I could, finding products as quickly as I could, which led to, of course, bad buys. Things I shouldn't have bought or shouldn't have bought as much of, things I should have bought more of that I didn't buy as much of. So if you kind of have that idea in mind first, you'll be able to avoid a lot of those mistakes. So the next thing would really be having systems in place, right? So it sounds stupid early on, especially if you're not doing this full time, or even if you are, you know, why would I ever want to have a system of, hey, we get a shipment of online arbitrage products, the boxes will sit here, we'll bring them over here, we'll open them up, we'll look through them, make sure everything's here it should be here. We'll scan it in, we'll cross-check it with the packing list first, and then we'll scan it into Inventory Lab or whatever software you use. We'll pull out the pricing sheet, and then we'll add it to Inventory Labs, add in the cost, have that spreadsheet already set up with the cost information, the supplier information, and what you're going to list it at, what the expected profit is supposed to be, and then printing out the labels, where you're going to store the stuff, box the stuff, etc., etc. So having those things in place is super key, right? Say your business blows up. Say your goal is in 3 years to get to $300,000 in sales, right? Within 3 years, you want to be doing that amount per year. Say within the first 6 months, you're on track to do that in your first year. Well, you weren't ready to scale that quickly, right? So now you didn't have these systems in place, so now you're scrambling and you're behind where you could be if you already had that in place. Even if you don't have employees, just kind of like generate that, you know, that workflow basically of how you would do a shipment, how you're sourcing your products, you know? Do you go to the Walmarts on this side of town? Do you source from these wholesale suppliers? You know, what's the process for you finding wholesale suppliers? And just kind of make, even if it's mental notes, notes in your phone, you know, an actual, you know, system written out in a Word doc of how it's supposed to go. That way, when you need to start hiring people, or even when Q4 comes, you're like, crap, I've got 4,000 units sitting in my warehouse. I'm a one-man show. You know, I need help because it's running out of time before Q4 really hits and to get this stuff in. Well, now if you already have those systems in place, you don't have to take a week or 2 weeks to train someone brand new on how to do it because you have systems in place. You can spend a couple days with them and show them, hey, this is how it's supposed to go. If you need a reference point or to look back on something, check out the employee, you know, manual, the process manual, whatever you want to call it, right? So that's a super key point. Again, mistake I made when I grew, got the warehouse, hired some help. I didn't have that in place right away, so I had to develop that. And then, you know, we were behind on getting shipments sent out because we were still training and things like that and coming up with that, you know, that workflow basically. The next point would really be funding, right? It's going to be a key thing to scale. And again, you don't need to scale super quickly. There's nothing wrong with taking 5 years to get to $200,000 in sales. A lot of people start this business and they just want to go as quickly as possible, which is of course understandable. You want to make as much money as quickly as possible. But along with that comes a lot of problems, right? Along with scaling really quickly comes a lot of problems because you may not have these systems in place. You may have to take on, you know, loans at crazy high interest rates. You don't have the equipment you need. You're making bad buying decisions because you're trying to spend as quickly as possible because you don't have the help that you need. You know, so all these things you need to factor in when you're trying to scale super quickly, is it really worth it, or should I take some more time and scale, get to that point in 3 years instead of 2 years? There's nothing wrong with that. But if you have all these things planned out ahead of time, it can help you scale even quicker, is what we're getting at here. So funding, a few ways you can do it. Of course, credit cards is a good way to scale your business when you don't have a lot of money to invest up front. Taking out loans, things like Amazon loans, PayPal loans, Cabbage, On Deck, Square. There's a million different loan providing companies for online businesses that they don't really care about your credit score. They don't care about your business credit history per se. They just want to see what your gross sales are and if you can meet the monthly payment. That's pretty much it. Developing net terms. If you're mainly in wholesale, developing net terms with suppliers can be really key to scaling your business as well. And what net terms are basically is the most common one is called a net 30. So basically from the time you place an order, from the time that order ships out from the supplier, you have 30 days to pay that invoice. So what the goal would be is you get the product, you send it into Amazon as quickly as possible, and then you start selling through the product before you have to pay the invoice. That way you can generate some of that money that you invested up front. You get that money back and you have money to pay off the invoice with. So that's kind of another cool way to do it. Plus there's 0% interest on it. You don't have to pay interest like on a lot of those loans I mentioned. You're paying at least usually upwards of 20%, maybe 18% at the lowest interest rate, which is really high. Same with credit cards. If you're not able to pay off the balance in full when it hits the statement within 30 days, you're going to be paying 20, 25, 28% interest on some of those credit cards. One other way would be to take on an investor. I know some people have done that. They take on an equity investor basically. So what that would mean is that you sell a portion of your company to someone for say, 40%, 30%, 25% for $50,000 or $20,000, whatever your company might be worth. In the very beginning, that may be hard to do. A lot of investors don't like to invest in businesses that are pre-revenue. So and plus they'll look at it as very saturated. There isn't a lot of history on e-commerce or Amazon businesses in general. So keep that in mind. You might want to factor that in later down the road. Once you're doing, say, a couple $100,000 or so, bring on an investor then, if that's something you want to look into. And you can use friends and family if you have friends and family in the beginning that support you, that have money to invest. That's a great option as well. If you have those kind of connections, or even someone to loan you money at a way lower interest rate, if it's a family friend or, someone like that. They could loan you money at 12%, 10%, 8%. That's way better than 20% interest rates. So those are a few different ways you can scale your business with funding, which is a very key part to growing this business, because an Amazon business is so cash flow heavy, is that you constantly need to be spending money, buying inventory, and then reinvesting that money. That's another huge topic, which could be a whole another video in itself, is how you need to reinvest pretty much every single dollar that you make outside of course, your expenses, or if you need to pay your own bills, But you need to reinvest every penny if you want to grow. The next thing will really be budgeting, which you kind of touched on, but you need to have that idea of, I need to spend this amount of dollars to get this amount of sales. Okay, what's that look like for me? So you have, say, $10,000 in the bank, and you need to look at, well, I've got this net 30 due in 2 weeks for $3,000. I've got the warehouse rent. I have, utilities, internet bill, different business expenses that are due. So you say, okay, well, I have $3,000 to spend because I will sell this stuff due within a week or so. So budgeting is super key. I found myself in a jam quite a few times because I was just, when I was doing RA especially, I would just go into Nike, Marshalls, all of them that I can, just racking up credit cards, just spending as quickly as possible. So I would go out and just swipe, 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 and then realize, oh crap, I have this thing that's due, this thing that's due, now I need to sell through more stuff and get more transfers back so I can pay for these items. So just budgeting is a really, really key thing to growing this business. Something else you need to keep in mind to invest in is equipment and supplies. You may not need a forklift, you may not need a pallet jack, you may not need all these other things that come with, a warehouse, computers, monitors, all that sort of thing. You may just be doing it out of your garage, which is totally fine. I did that for a year and a half rather, before I got a warehouse. But you'll need, label printers, you'll need some sort of computer, you'll need scanners, you'll need poly bags, you'll need labels, boxes, etc. So just keep in mind you're going to have to invest in some of that equipment to get started and also grow. I started out with a piece of crap scanner that had to be wired up to the computer for like 10 bucks when I started doing books. And then as I scaled and grew, I bought a $130 Bluetooth scanner because it saved us time doing shipments. We have to walk back and forth to the scanner plugged into the computer. We could carry it around with us and scan stuff, you know. You'll need to buy shelving racks. You'll need to buy a better scale. I started out with a scale that was like $15. Now I have one that's like $100 because it's way more heavy duty. It can hold up to like 400 pounds, which I don't need, but it's just very consistent. It doesn't need to run off batteries, etc., etc. So you'll just need money to invest in better equipment as you go on. Like I said, say you do grow, you get a warehouse, you start accepting pallets, now you need a forklift, now you need a pallet jack. There's a couple $1,000s right there easily. So that's money you should be setting aside to save for those future investments in equipment and more supplies, you know. As you grow, you'll need to order more poly bags, more labels at a time. If you order stuff from Uline, if you order in bulk, you can get a discount. So say if you have money to spend $1,000 or order, say 5,000 poly bags instead of you just normally order 1,000, but you can get them for 2 cents cheaper per bag. That's a huge difference on 5,000 poly bags, you know. So just keep that in mind as well. One other thing that kind of goes with that is software. Like for instance, repricing. I started out with Reprice It, which I believe is $10 a month, or at least at the time it was. And you know, now I have a software that's I think $200 per month. What App Eagle or Inform.co is $200 or $150 a month. You know, so obviously from $10 to $200 per month, it's a big jump. I use Be Cool and some other ones too before I got to, you know, the top of the line one. But just keep in mind, you're gonna have to invest in more expensive software as you grow. You have to invest in different software as you grow. Like when I started out, I used like 3 different software. Now I have over 10. Some of them I don't use all the time. Some of them maybe aren't super necessary, but my software expense went from about $50 a month to like $500, you know? So one other thing you'll need to save for and invest in. The next thing will be employees, obviously. That kind of comes with growing any sort of business. As you grow, you need more help. But you can use virtual assistants, you can use physical, you know, real employees, you can use part-time help. There's a lot of things that you can outsource that you don't necessarily need to hire someone to do. You know, if you list on eBay, there's software that you can send pictures or description of what you have and they list products for you. That might be a good alternative, especially if you don't have a place for an employee to come really work. You operate out of your house. You don't want some stranger, some person coming to work in your house. Boom, pay for the software or the service that has eBay list your items for you. You know, same thing with Amazon. There's a lot of things that even in my business I use a virtual assistant for. You know, for checking inventory levels, you can use them for finding new products, doing a ton of different research, data entry, you know, looking through wholesale sheets, whatever you want to use virtual assistants for, they're there. Plus, you don't have to pay taxes for them, which you might are supposed to at some level. Anyone I've talked to doesn't, so speak with a CPA, lawyer, that sort of person before you take that advice to heart. But yeah, virtual assistants, like they're cool with being paid $2, $3 an hour because a lot of them are in the Philippines, and the exchange rate works out where that's a lot of money in their economy and not so much money in our economy. So it's a win-win situation, right? But even once you do need employees to say help prep and pack stuff in your warehouse or office or wherever, you know, that's going to be another cost investment you have to make. You want to make sure before you hire someone that you have at least a month, if not 2 months worth of salary, you know, saved up for that person. Say you're going to pay someone $2,000 a month to work full time for you, to prep and pack shipments and handle all that sort of thing. You know, you need to have at least $2,000 saved up before you hire them, because say, you know, sales drop off, say you get suspended, say a lot of things that can happen, right? Say Amazon loses 3 of your big shipments in a row, your sales drop off, and you don't have the amount of money coming in that you normally do. Well, now you don't have money to pay that employee, right? And that employee, especially if they're starting out new, they're not going to be cool with like, oh yeah, I can't pay you for the first 2, 3, 4 weeks because our sales dropped off. They're going to leave and go get a different job because it's not very professional, and they want to know they can rely on you because they have their own bills to pay, right? So make sure you have that saved up and you can afford that person you're going to be hiring first. Like I said, with VAs it's a little different. They're kind of like contract work, you know. You decide, hey, I have this project, I have this wholesale sheet I want you to go through. It'll probably take 10 or 15 hours to go through it, so that's going to cost me, if I'm paying them $2 an hour, like $30, you know. Okay, you can afford that. That's different than a $2,000 per month commitment, month over month, you know, like a reoccurring expense, basically. So just make sure you're ready to make that commitment, and you should do it sooner than later. Usually, like they say, the time when you think you need to hire an employee, you probably should have done it a month or 2 months ago, right? Because you could have been scaling your business even more to where you're at now, but you waited to try to do everything yourself, and you didn't hand off to other people, you know? So that's a very key point as well, is hiring people, whether it's VAs, you know, regular employees, or part-time help, whatever. The last thing really I'll touch on is getting a bigger space. Of course, that comes with the Amazon business. You see on Instagram people getting warehouses, office spaces, from, you know, 200 square foot office all the way up to a 20, 30,000 square foot warehouse, you know? And it's whatever you're comfortable with, right? Like, what's your end goal with Amazon? Do you just want it to be kind of a side hustle for a while, pay you an extra $500, $1,000, $2,000 per month? Or do you want it to be a full-time business to where you build it to where you could pay yourself a nice salary of $60,000 a year and kind of live off that for as long as you can and start investing into some other businesses? Or do you want to build it as big as possible, make this huge multi-million-dollar company and sell it to another retailer or some other sort of distributor or wholesale business, and they pay you, you know, $500,000, $1 million to buy your business from you, and then you cash out and you can live off that money or invest in other things, you know? So you got to determine what's your goal with that before you start getting these bigger spaces, you know? You just don't want to, oh, I'm going to get this giant, you know, warehouse, 5,000 square feet so I can really grow quickly, you know? Because then you'll be caught with that rent and you're like, well, I don't really want to manage 10 employees. I don't really want to be buying all this stuff, you know? So just realize what you're doing before you go and make that commitment. So, but that's something you'll have to grow into, is an office space, warehouse space, whatever it might be, and just make sure you can afford it, again, before you take on that commitment. A lot of leases, commercial leases, are usually at least 2 or 3 years or more. So just keep that in mind. Another alternative to getting a warehouse, of course, is using a prep center. You know, you pay 50 cents to $1 or whatever it may cost for a prep center. And shameless plug, we're still accepting clients for our prep center, LBOE Prep, and offering that offer of 50 units at our lowest price point of 50 cents per unit. If you want more information on that, email us at lboeprep@gmail.com or drop a comment down below. Now that's all the way with, but that's a great way if you don't want to make a 3-year commitment of $2,000, $3,000 per month on a warehouse rent plus utilities and everything else, and hiring employees. You can use a prep center and pay them a 50 cent, 75 cent fee per unit and have them take care of prepping all your stuff for you. So there's, of course, a lot of different ways to scale your business. There's no right or wrong way to do it, but just keep in mind, have a plan in place, know where you're going, know how you're going to get there before you just, I'm going to get rich overnight, I'm going to make $1 million, I see these other people making $1 million, that's going to be me too. Realize there's going to be a lot of long nights, a lot of working through the weekends if that's what you want to do to get there, and it's not going to be easy, right? I'll be the first person to tell you it's the farthest thing from easy. So if you guys got more questions about this, want to see more about this topic, have ideas for future videos, drop them down below, and we'll see you guys later.